Welcome to the another episode of r/askreddit. Serious, what is a genuinely terrifying true fact? People can die suddenly without warning or symptoms of anything significant to give warning. Source: lost my wife 4 years ago when she was only 23 to a heart attack, precipitated by non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. No symptoms or risk factors leading up to it. She was skinny, in shape, energetic, didn't use drugs. Just got home from work one day and she was gone. Very sorry for your loss. I had a buddy die from a brain aneurysm 26 years old. In seemingly excellent health. Went to a business conference one day and was dead the next. Ever since, I have been terrified of aneurysms. If you don't get enough calcium when you're pregnant, the foetus saps it right out of your bones, leaving you brittle and vulnerable to osteoporosis. My cousin's 25-year-old wife lost all her teeth while pregnant, despite taking vitamins, etc. Dentures at 25. My teeth were destroyed after giving birth. I was so self-conscious for so long, literally crumbling out of my mouth. Just recently got all the front cavities fixed up and regaining my confidence, but the way that baby said calcium, mine really shook me. Autoimmune diseases are hella scary. One day the system that was designed to protect you thinks your own cells are pathogenic and decides to attack you. They also tend to be activated when your body goes through a really stressful event. So something shitty happens, you're really sick, you think you've recovered and gotten over it, then like a year later discover that you have a new friend for life. In my case, a virus attacked my heart, probably came pretty close to killing me, and a year after I recovered and was back to normal heart function I was diagnosed with RA. BTW ladies, according to my rheumatologist, pregnancy is a very common trigger for autoimmune diseases in women. We'll never know who the best serial killers are. I think it's more frightening that it's estimated that up to 50 serial killers are operating in the US, for reference, at any given time. Currently there is about 128 confirmed serial killers on the loose in America, to be more accurate. You can have a really bad disease for years and not even know about it, due to it becoming dormant or latent. Essentially the disease is asleep and you wouldn't have a clue it was there unless a doctor told you. You could go to the grave with it, or it could wake up at the most inconvenient time. In South Africa it's reckoned up to 55% of the population has latent tuberculosis at this moment. My uncle found out he had cancer because he went to the doctor for pain in his side. He was dead around 10 days later. He was absolutely riddled with it. It was everywhere. Literally nothing could be done. They just made him comfortable and he passed. How long the cancer must have been there, just silently taking over his entire body. When electricity was first made available for home use, the wires were not insulated and not hidden behind walls. People had live wires freestanding in their homes, at an arm's reach. Utter terrifying insanity. It still happens in third world countries. I got one. So years ago I started losing my balance and losing feeling in my legs. As they told me I had only about 5 more years to live, they did an MRI to see how bad the lesions were in my brain. They thought I had MS. So once I do the MRI, they're like, you need to see an ENT, nose, and throat doctor right away. So I'm like, dude, tell me about the MS, and all they do is keep repeating go to the ENT. So I go to the ENT, and he explains they think I have a giant fungal growth taking up the entirety of my sinus cavities and pressing on my brain. So after medication, a super painful surgery where they had to break my nose and sinuses to get it out, medical stints that were made on a 3D printer using some hardened medicine, and about 4 months of healing, I was back to normal-ish. The horrifying part, the fungus comes from the feces of chickens, and it is being introduced to the air by haulers moving chickens. Everyone in the US breathes in these spores regularly, but it mostly takes hold in people with compromised immune systems. Settling in the lungs is most common, and is often mistaken for lung cancer at first. ETA, thank you all for the upvotes. Yes, it was histoplasmosis. ETA 2, I have not seen The Last of Us, but now I don't think I want to. With a lifespan increasing due to modern medicine, we are at an increased chance of developing dementia. After seeing a close family member slowly wither away, having machines basically keeping them alive, and having zero quality of life, I never understood the purpose. We should prioritize quality, not quantity, and if someone is ready to go, have that conversation and let them make a decision. My loved one confided in me, when he was lucid, that he wanted it all to end. Wish I could have helped. I met a woman in the 90s, my girlfriend worked with her at a charity. Really nice lady, like years favanti type of person. I learned that she once had a child, a little boy. He only lived to be a few years old, because one day, while they were both playing in the garden, the boy picked up a snail and licked it. Can't remember if it was days or weeks later, but parasites had nested in his brain, they eaten it from inside. What is more terrifying? That common snails can do this, or that your child can be lost so quickly and innocently while you are playing in the garden making memories. I will never forget that. I literally read about an outbreak of this in the southeastern US today. Wash the shit out of your Vegas, and don't eat snails and slugs. According to a bunch of sources, the parasites on snails account for 200,000 deaths a year worldwide. That's shocking. Very few are this brain-eating type. 99% of that number is from schistosomiasis, which is a major problem in Africa. I guess this isn't terrifying, but the pillars of creation, that amazing feature in the Eagle Nebula, that is super famous and amazing looking, doesn't exist anymore. It was wiped out by a supernova some 7,000 years ago, and given that it is 6,000 to 6,500 light years away, we can still see it, but in the next 500 to 1,000 years astronomers will no longer see it in the night sky, though I assume they'll see a really amazing supernova which could equally be as awesome. Imagine spending your life at just the right moment in history that you can watch a supernova unfold and wipe out a massive 425 light year tall iconic feature in our galaxy. How do we know the supernova happened? If the light of the supernova reached us, wouldn't the light from the destroyed pillars of creation have reached us as well? There's no definitive proof, but it is theorized that they were wiped away 7,000-ish years ago. There is a huge cloud of dust in front of our view of the pillars, which many have attributed to a supernova and the subsequent destruction of surrounding objects, which would also cause the pillars to be destroyed. It's possible that they could be completely wiped away, or that it could take thousands of years for them to fully erode. Women are 8 times more likely to be murdered when they are pregnant. Former domestic violence counselor here. One of the leading causes of death in pregnant women is murder by intimate partner. Yep. And even if they are in a good relationship, the pregnancy was planned and everything. All pregnancy comes with a risk of death. So not only was she already at risk by simply being pregnant, but if she's in a bad relationship, is now at risk for DV. Which is one of the reasons I moved out of Missouri. Pregnant women aren't allowed to divorce their spouses. Meaning they can't leave, because they might not be able to get support from the government, because they are considering his income as well. Guck that shit. Half of the world's coral reefs have died in the last 30 years, and 2/3 of the Great Barrier Reef have been damaged by coral bleaching. This actually made me sad. Coral reefs are some of the most beautiful things in the world and they are dying. Genuinely depressing. Not trying to make it worse, but forget the beauty as a reason to feel sad. Those reefs have an enormous ecological impact and their deaths will affect all of us living beings. Antibiotic treatments are becoming less and less effective and common infections and minor injuries could become life-threatening. As someone that uses them at least once or twice a year, antibiotic resistance is genuinely terrifying to me. It's like bacterial infections becoming viral ones. Antibiotic resistance is the scariest thing I can think of, and it's already happening. That flesh-eating bacteria that's killing people in FL and a couple of other parts of the US are antibiotic resistant. The fact that the news stories I have read on it don't even include the phrase is even more terrifying. 40% of prostitutes in India are children. That gucking sucks. The Lissa virus has been plaguing our species for thousands of years. Once contracted, the virus hijacks your nervous system to travel to your brain, much different than a normal virus. By this method it remains completely undetected by your immune system. This process can take weeks to months. Once the virus reaches your brain, your immune system is put into overdrive as it can finally detect something is wrong. However, the Lissa virus continues to control your central nervous system and forcibly tells your cells to self-destruct as they arrive in your brain. That cells that it does not tell to self-destruct, it tells to sever neurons in your brain, causing confusion, lethargy, rage, and paralysis. At this point the virus starts to move towards your salivary glands where it will attempt to infect another mammal. While this is happening it reprograms your brain to make you afraid of water. You run a massive fever, you're dying of thirst, your brain starts to swell, pressing against your skull. This pressure causes damage, and once a critical point is reached, your organs fail one by one, until you slip into a coma and die. Once the rabies virus reaches your brain, and you start experiencing symptoms, you will die, and there is nothing that can be done to save you. Over the thousands of years that the virus has been terrorizing humanity, killing tens of thousands of people a year, only around 50 people have defeated the virus in all of recorded history. It takes only 1 second to change your life forever. I went from working 70 hours a week to being disabled. 1 second accident. Life was forever changed for me. Also, life could change from bad to good as well. 1 second to buy that lottery ticket that wins. Yup, just visited a friend that sneezed 7 years ago and messed his back up. He'll never be the same. Only benefit he gets is that he has a handicap license plate. Our brains will not hesitate to remove something that is vital to us to keep us alive by programming it to die. What sort of thing? For example, when you're freezing to death, your brain will shut off blood circulation to your fingers, toes, nose and ears, arms and legs, so it can get all the blood to your body and head to keep them warm, even though you can't realistically function without these parts. That we need some way to replicate the ambient noise of the earth for extended stays in space. I'm not talking of cities, cars, etc. The ambient seismic noise the earth creates. Why? Because humans are so reliant on the noise that, if we don't hear it, we become more anxious. It's already a problem on the list of problems for astronauts who stay for long periods on the ISS. Edit. For clarity. Can you elaborate? What seismic noise do you mean? The ambient seismic noise is the sound of natural earth processes, wind blowing, waves crashing against the shore, the micro movements of rocks, rain, thunder, animals walking on the ground, people, etc. All of this generates a low frequency ambient noise that you miss when it's not there. In the movie Interstellar, I know, they touch on this briefly. Shortly after initial takeoff, Cooper is seen passing by the bunk of a crewmate. The crewmate appears sad and disheartened. Cooper is wearing headphones and the audience would think he's listening to music. He briefly asks if the crewmate is okay and hands him the headphones. It's nature noises. Crickets chirping, wind blowing. It's something that never occurred to me. Out of everyone alive on Earth right now, there is someone who is suffering more than anyone else. There's someone being tortured right now. I hate how often I think about this. If you have an infection severe enough, your body may eventually kill itself by attempting to save you. It's called sepsis, and it's an overreaction of your immune system, often leading to organ failure due to a dramatic decrease in blood pressure, among other things. At its highest severity, it is known as septic shock and patients often need to be put into a medically induced coma. It's the cause of about a half of the deaths in hospitals, and the initial infection doesn't even have to be that bad. What's scarier is that even routine dental appointments can cause this. Earlier this year, I had to have a tooth pulled which had cracked and developed an abscess. Yuck and ouch. Within an hour, I was in the hospital with a heart rate of nearly 200, plummeting blood pressure, extreme mental confusion, and I was shaking so badly that I couldn't breathe properly. I was told that after the tooth was pulled by my dentist, bacteria entered my bloodstream through the open socket, and I would have gone into septic shock had I made it to the hospital any later. I was in the hospital for 5 days, and I'm lucky to be alive. A lot of the time, when a bacterial infection kills you, it's your brain and body that actually pulled the trigger. That surgeon who's getting ready to cut you open sometimes has nights when they can't sleep, and they show up to work groggy as hell. My former roommate was a drug dealer for surgeons who used meth to keep themselves going for 12-hour surgeries. I don't know which is scarier, meth or groggy. Give me the surgeon on coke, and send him some more compliments of his patient. After a successful surgery, your bed has around 10 million dust mites. I'm not concerned. I have way worse stuff in my sheets. The ovaries are not attached to the fallopian tubes, they actually yeet the egg across a small void, and the fallopian tube shoos it in the door with little flanges. Because of this gap, while rare, it is possible for a fertilized egg to escape into the abdominal cavity and attach itself to other organs. The bladder, the liver, anything really. And because embryos are very innovative parasites that excel at evading the carrier's immune system, they can develop and wreak havoc. On that same note, the void also allows sperm to escape and swim around in the abdominal cavity until they die 5 to 7 days later. While harmless, it's still a little disturbing to think about having sperm in your guts. I'd imagine you could literally be dead in the next 10 seconds. Aneurysm, embolism, heart attack, car crash, plane crash. Life is way too precious. The moment you die will feel exactly the same as this one. And in an instant I understood. There's no difference between the present and the future. No other me that will suffer the indignity of death while I live on. It's all a single moment, and there's no difference between that last moment that ushers us out into oblivion and the one we experience now. The promise of a cold and lonely eternity in the grave would have been a mercy. At least it would be eternal. But everything ends, even the universe, even time. And that means it has always already ended. The sheer amount of banking and financial services that rely on Excel spreadsheets is enormous. Software generally is bad, and can and does kill people. Self-driving cars are least of the problem. First sentence is essentially my job. Maintaining old spreadsheets, making new versions of them, and trying to get the functionality in those many local tools, which can in some cases be incredibly complex, made into a part of one of the main systems used. The reason Excel and VBA programming survives to this day in the financial sector is that there are so many changes, so often, that the used software rarely is flexible enough to manage it all. What good is it that the IT team promised to take the requested functionality up for discussion during their next sprint session in 1 month when there is a need for it to exist today? Enter me, coding it into VBA, and sending out the necessary info within a day from getting the request. Thank you.